This is my review of Beast Morphers, and I honestly have mixed feelings about this season and this show. I don't think that it's the greatest season ever, and neither do I think it's the worst I've seen. I honestly think this season is just one of those seasons, in my opinion, that had the potential to be one of the greatest seasons of all time, but it just lacks a lot of things to me, for me to put it on top. So far, I want to give Beast Morphers, starting this review off, a good 6 out of 7. There are definitely things I liked and definitely things I didn't like. And the number one thing I'm going to start off with, the continuity. I honestly don't really like the way they addressed a lot of the continuity in this show, in my opinion. My thing about them having the past weapons and things, it was never really explained, and it really ignored the hell out of me that people up here praising them having past weapons and past morphers and things like that. But they were quick to tear down Megaforce for doing the same thing, for them having past powers and not explaining it. Well, I'm going to be just as harsh on this show about them not explaining them having these past weapons, just as hard as I was on Megaforce about not explaining how they got access to these past powers and these past suits. And another thing that I didn't like how they tried to jam in RPM at the last minute. It just seemed so rushed. In my opinion, if they were going to have this season be connected to RPM, they should start building towards it in the beginning of the show. It just all felt so rushed and just so crammed in and just so last minute. And I just feel like they overcomplicated it, making Beast Morphers take place in the main universe, where it would have just been easier for them to just put it in RPM's universe, and bam, you wouldn't have had to do all of that rushing in the last minute of the show. And so far for the appearance in this show, y'all know how I feel about the legendary Dino War. That was just horrible, and I will not just rip that apart again. You already know I was not a fan of the legendary Dino War. It's definitely not one of my favorite team-ups of all time, but there were definitely some things that I enjoyed about Beast Morphers, but I'm just going to go ahead and rip open the things I didn't like. Obviously, I'm talking about the continuity, but I also want to talk about the ending too. But I'm going to get to the ending later. I'm going to get back on topic with the continuity. I also don't like how they kind of just changed Benjik's motives up. Benjik went from wanting to conquer the world with machines to wanting to control the morphing grid, and I don't really understand. It's not really explained why did he change his his goal, why did he change his ambition. It just was so out of place to me, and it just really didn't sit well with me, in my opinion. And also, man, I also don't really like how they just freely travel through these universes now without any real explanations to how they're traveling through this universe. I also feel like they should have explained that better, with how these Rangers are traveling through these different dimensions and different universes in this show. It just happens in this show for some reason, and it's just kind of lazy how they just chalk it up to the morphing grid. It's just pretty lazy to me in writing, and I really didn't like it, in my opinion. At least in this still, the travel between dimensions and times and things was explained with Wes coming back, but in this show it just happens. I mean, it just happens, man. But whatever, I'm not gonna just rip it apart too much, because I did like Dr. K's return, and I did like the Dino Rangers return. The legendary Dino team up, y'all know how I feel about that shit. It was not legendary whatsoever. And Colonel Truman's inclusion in the last episode didn't really bother me that much. I thought that they were okay. I thought that those appearances were okay. But let's get to the ending of this show. Honestly, I did not like the ending. I didn't like how they killed Benjik with just bleeding on Benjik, I guess using human DNA to destroy Benjik. It just didn't make sense to me, because Benjik was able to infect Roxy, and he was able to infect them, and they're humans, so how come he was able to infect those two, but they took him down using human DNA. It just was mind-boggling to me. And also, why the hell is Devin commander at the end? This guy doesn't have barely a year of experience of working here, and he's the commander. In my opinion, if you were going to make anybody commander out of this team, should have been Robbie, because that just rubbed me the wrong way. And I also did not like the Pinocchio shit with Steel. And in my opinion, they cast the wrong guy to be human Steel. Steel is confident. Steel is supposed to have an actor that comes off as confident. This guy looked just like Nate, in my opinion, and it just didn't match with the character that had been shown to me in the robot suit. It just did not match up. You know, it just was something else that just confused me about this ending of the show. So, whatever, man. That ending to me was just rushed, and it was terrible. I've never watched the end of this show again. It's not even worth revisiting because I just get pissed off again. But whatever. Well, let's get to the opening. Everybody knows I do not like Beast Morphers thing. I mean, it grew on me, but I still don't like it very much. I still don't like how rushed it is. I still don't like how crammed in the lyrics seem. It just seemed like this guy went in and recorded all the lyrics separately and tried to cram them and add them together, and it just didn't mesh up right to me. It sounds like the Ninja Steel theme in some ways, and it just ends way too quick. I don't like the pacing of the theme. The pacing of the opening is off. It's too fucking fast. You know, it feels like, and I can't believe that the opening is 58 seconds. It feels like 20 seconds when you're watching it. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna talk about the opening. The characters, in my opinion, okay to boring in this show. I mean, Devin starting off seemed like he could really be a strong character in this show with him and his dad disagreeing about his life. But in my opinion, I just feel like they don't really do enough with it. And I didn't really like how easily they resolved it at the end of Beast Morphers. In my opinion, I would have had Devin's dad be even more hard on him because he's a ranger now. Kind of like what they did with West and his father. That dynamic that I really like. It just feels so damn rushed at the end of BM. His dad finds out he's a ranger, and then they just hug it out and everything's alright. It just seems so damn rushed. It just seems like there's no real build up to it. I don't really feel like his dad really chum enough for him to really be an obstacle as much as they try to make his dad in the show. It just feels like, but Devin as a character himself, I mean, he's just having fun, and that's all I can really say about Devin. He's just having fun and likes video games and martial arts, and that's pretty much it, I guess. And another character that I really felt like they botched was Robbie. His mom is the commander of Grid Battle Force, and they don't do anything with that. You think with that, they would try to do something with them with her son having this responsibility. There's no interaction. There's nothing really between the two in the show. She just gives him typical ass advice, and I'm just on that. And I just also feel like that his storyline with Roxy is so botched. They botched that by the end of the show, because I do like in the first season of Beast Morphers that he does start to really mix Roxy, and he starts to really be affected by her becoming evil. But I just feel like in the second season, they just completely just dropped the ball with it, because we don't really get to see the relationship build in that show. It's just kind of dropped in favor of Nate's and Zoe's. And Nate's and Zoe's relationship, it doesn't really aggravate me. I mean, I think it's really corny with some of the shit they say to each other, but it's alright. It's not really a storyline or anything that really bothered me in the show, but they must have forgot they had another relationship in the show because it just feels like they forgot about Robbie and Roxy. I honestly just feel like Robbie just kind of just blends in and just becomes a background character by the end of the show. Honestly, at times he feels like an extra. I thought he was going to be this really serious character that was tough on everybody. I thought he was going to be Sky to Devin's Jack, but we didn't really get that. It just feels like Robbie was just there at times in the show, and I was just like, you guys set up so much for this character, but you didn't really deliver with it. Zoe is probably my favorite character out of the first three Rangers in this show because Zoe is the type of person that will give you the clothes off of her back. I do like her storyline of her going from just your average worker at Great Battle Force to a Ranger, getting to really just go on this experience that's bigger than life. I mean, Zoe didn't really bother me as a character because I really did like her optimistic nature and just her passion for what she was doing. She always seemed in good spirits with this role and commend her on that. I honestly do like the storyline with her and Nate. It's very well built up, and like I said, even though I feel like the relationship is so corny with some of the things they do and some of the things they say, it is a fine relationship to me. It really wasn't a storyline that really bothered me within the show. So Zoe is probably the first character that I'm just gonna say is one that I'm a huge fan of in the show. And next we're gonna get to Nate. Nate, in my opinion, I honestly do like what they were doing with his character, even though I don't really like that they made him the Gold Ranger because the footage thing really bothered. It's something that I just could not overlook in the show. You have Nate be this nerdy, scrawny guy who didn't even want to try to engage Roxy and Blaze in a fight in the first episode to this ass kicker when he becomes a Ranger. It just something that honestly really bothered me. But the storyline that he had with Steel, with him wanting to have a brother and Steel kind of filling in as a brother for him, I mean, I liked it, but I just would have rather not have had Robbie be a Ranger because it's just something that just really just didn't make sense when you see the fight scenes. I mean, it just really didn't make sense in my opinion. I mean, with Siggy, the difference between Nate and Siggy is you see Siggy really grow as a character. He goes from stumbling to not being able to fight to being able to hold his own by the end of RPM in a fight. So it just is something that I'm never going to really just be cool with because I don't really like how they handled Nate as a Ranger. But whatever. The character himself was alright, but I did think that his relationships were handled fine. I do think that him and Zoe really should have gotten more time towards the end to really show us where they're going to go next with their relationship, because I did like how their relationship was handled until the end. And also, I did like him and Steele's relationship. Steele was like a brother to Nate, always protecting Nate, always there for Nate. I honestly thought that was dope. Until the very end where Steele gets a human form, becomes a human, and I really did not like that. One, I don't like the Pinocchio shit in Power Rangers. It just is something that really just bothers me in my opinion. And also the way they handled it was just so half-assed to me because the actor that they chose to play Steel did not match his personality. Steel is supposed to be strong, confident. It's supposed to look like somebody who could kick your ass, but in reality the actor that they chose looked like Nate could kick his ass. So to me, it really didn't make sense. If I didn't watch this show and somebody told me that this character was the human form of Steel, I would be like, stop fucking lying to me. Stop playing. this just doesn't mesh up. It just doesn't make sense aesthetic wise. So, and also another thing that I did like about Nate's character, I did like how they correlated his character with Dr. K's, with both having created a dangerous virus that attacks the world and them having to overcome the mental trauma of it all. I do like Dr. K's interaction that she does have with Nate, even though I do think that the way that they had Benjix included in the show and the reveal of Benjix wasn't handled very well. I did like the context of the correlation between both of these characters. That's about it for Nate, in my opinion. Now to talk about Steel as a character. I really did enjoy Steel in this show, man. He was charismatic, witty, and pretty much the heart of the whole team when he arrived. As I said, I love his brotherhood and his bromance with Nate, man. It is one of the most adorable things that I've ever seen in the whole entire PR series. Like, I just love to see these two interact, and I love to see them butt heads throughout the show. It's amazing. Although I don't really agree with how they made him a human. I don't understand how the morphing grid made him a human. It didn't make any sense. At least in Overdrive, we had a better explanation of how Mac became a human, and I didn't really think that was a good ending for Steel. The point of Steel's story was for him to accept himself. This was a self-acceptance type of story, and him becoming human undoes that. And I know I'm going to have somebody be like, but wasn't Max the same type of story, but people didn't agree with it? Well, here's my point. One, I don't agree with people's takes about disliking Mac as a robot. And two, the context of Mac's story was very different from Steel's. Mac's story was to learn to live with other people's decisions. So him becoming a human at the end makes more sense because now he has the freedom to live his life like he wants and make his own decisions. It doesn't make sense with Steel because Steel didn't accept himself. Mac always accepted himself. Even when he found out that he was a robot, Mac still accepted himself. Mac was pissed off at his father for not telling him the truth and revealing things to him. It was not the fact that he couldn't accept himself at the end of the day. Honestly, I just felt like they should have did better actually with the execution of Morphex, because we never really got an explanation of how they turned all these Rangers' powers and essence into goop and use it as energy. It was so confusing. Like, I honestly could never figure that out. We never really got an explanation. And also, I feel like they were just way too reckless with how they distributed Morph-X. I mean, I think about Compound B and The Boys, and if you are watching The Boys, please skip past this section because I'm going to in The Boys they have Compound B, which is liquid that gives humans superpowers, and before Homelander fucks everything up and distributes the compound to people all over the world, they're very secure of it. They're guarding it. They're not letting it slip out of their hands so much. But I just feel like in Beast Morphers, they were just a little bit too reckless with this substance. It just feels like they didn't really care about who they were distributing to, who they were giving it to. It's no wonder that E-Box was able to get his hands on it, because it just felt like they weren't really securing this Morph-X like they should have been. And honestly, it's just something that really annoyed me. And then people were like, man, they should have never turned it off. But you know what? I was glad when they stopped using Morph-X in the end, because they had already done too much fucking damage with their recklessness and them not protecting it, not securing it correctly. So I did not care about them deciding not to go forward with Morph-X at the end of the show. So, yeah. Also, how the hell do they have access to all this past technology and these past morphers? What the hell was that? People talk about Megaforce and their lack of explanation, but they excuse this shit. No, bro. I'm gonna keep that same fucking energy for Beast Morphers because we never, and I mean we never, got an explanation of how the hell they got access to all of this past tech, these past Morphers. Hell, they probably have access to past fucking swords for all we fucking know. But I am just so confused on that. People sit and they bitch about the Neo Saban era having a lack of explanation for things, but they excuse Hasbro for having the same lack of explanation for things. Honestly, if I ran this show, I would have had like a Ranger Union, and I would have had Grid Battle Force be the storage facility for all the past weapons and past morphers. But what I just said isn't goddamn canon, so I'm just gonna let that one go. And also, you people expect me to believe that Benjix is E-Box? E-Box was one of the most generic fucking villains ever, and you're telling me, you're actually trying to convince me that he's fucking Benjix. Man, get the fuck out of here. Honestly, I felt like they added in the RPM stuff too late. If you guys were going to make this season a sequel, or if you guys weren't going to involve RPM in this season, you should have started in the beginning, because towards the end it just felt rushed, and it just felt like something that the writers put in at the last fucking minute, and it didn't make fucking sense. Because let me tell you, Benjix's whole goal was to conquer the world using machines. His goal was never, and I mean to never ever use the morphing grid for shit. I just want an explanation for the change of fucking goals, because it just felt so out of nowhere in my opinion. But whatever, man. Whatever. I'm not gonna go too hard on that. I just gave you my thoughts on fucking Benjix. But let's get to Roxy and Blaze. I honestly really enjoy Roxy and Blaze as villains. Not when they turn good, because they don't do shit with these guys after they turn good. They just kind of ignore them. I'm like, didn't you guys just have a whole relationship angle in the past season? But now they're good, you're just gonna fucking annoy them, and they were actually meant to be Rangers first, but we're going to fucking ignore the two. Okay, whatever. But as villains, I really did enjoy them. They had a lot of personality, brought a lot of energy, and were hella fun to watch as villains. But when we start talking about them post their villain tree, I don't even think villain tree's a word, but just go to it. It just gets boring from there. They don't do shit with them afterwards. It just feels like all of that build up and all the things that they had set up for them when they turned good in season 1 was just a bunch of bullshit, because they did not follow up with it in season 2. But whatever, man. That's just my comments on the villains. Oh man, I almost forgot Scrozzle. Scrozzle was also very fun and very entertaining to watch. His wits and his intelligence are admirable in my opinion. And I honestly felt like they should have used Scrozzle just a little bit more, because I really enjoyed, I'm telling you, I really enjoyed Scrozzle. He's probably my favorite out of all of the villains in the show. Yeah, I like Scrozzle better than everybody. Sorry if that offends anybody, but that's just my opinion, people. Oh, and also talk about this shit. Devin becoming commander at the end was one of the worst fucking decisions that this show made. We're just gonna make Devin a commander of a whole fucking organization after a year of experience as a ranger? Hell, I would have been even cool if we did this with fucking Robbie, because he's been around for a long time and he's been under his mother for years and saw she does things within the organization. But we're gonna make Devin the fucking commander of Grid Battle Force. Really? Fucking really? Fucking really? You guys just expected me to overlook that and not talk about how incompetent that makes Grid Battle Force look? So I could just go and apply for Grid Battle Force and go from a rookie to the commander of the whole operation in a year? Yeah, something ain't right about this organization. People question SPD's hierarchy, but at least in that show, roles and characters and things have been built over time. This show hands out promotions like schools hand out trophies just for participating in things. Man, I don't know what the fuck they were thinking with that one, man. And I also want to add something to this review that I did not when I previously recorded it. As you know, I was not a fan of Benjix being in Beast Morphers. For one, I thought it was rushed. I felt like this should have been built as an RPM sequel from the start instead of towards the middle of season 2. I just didn't feel like that was a good decision because that opened up a lot of questions that had not been answered. Number one, why would Dr. K not scan these Morphers before she gave them to Grid Battle Force? Dr. K doesn't strike me as the irresponsible type. You'd think that she would scan every single weapon, every single object in her possession before she gave it to a whole other organization in another universe. I don't get why that was never ever done by Dr. K or the organization in RPM. I will never understand that. And neither does Grid Battle Force check anything, but hell, they're not the most responsible organization either. They just play with morphing grid energy and they don't think about any of the repercussions of it. They just play around with the energy in this show, but whatever, man. I just never bought into the fact that E-Box could be Benjix whatsoever. Literally, guys, the only similarity between the two that has been made in this whole entire show is that they are viruses and that they love machines. That is it. Nothing else is really elaborated on. There's no other connections to make that will make you think that A could equal B. The only correlation that this show has given us is that, people. And I just feel like it is kind of lazy. I just feel like that all of this writing leading up to the reveal could have been done a lot better in my opinion. But that's just me, you guys. I honestly think that they had two different writing teams, the Saban and the Hasbro team, and they were struggling to kind of put ideas together and to agree on things, because I feel like in the writing room they had all this figured out, but the other side disagreed and they had to come to some type of compromise. And this could either be good or bad, and I always do like when writing teams are more on one accord and everybody is agreeing in the writing room, because that gives us a lot of good ideas. But when you have dual writing teams and a lot of the ideas are opposing each other, you get stuff like this. The one thing that I can say I like about the writing team in Dino Fury so far is that it seems like everybody is on one accord and has a shared vision. But in this show, it just seems like a lot of the Neo Saban writers and Hasbro writers, this is their first time coming together, and they were arguing or disagreeing about certain ideas with the show. So, you know, it resulted in a lot of blunders, or a few blunders in the show. But, you know, that's just my take on it all, you guys. And another thing that I honestly do want to talk about is the human DNA thing again. It is just something that will bother me forever, guys. I am sorry, but we literally watch Benjix take over human bodies in RPM and do it to some extent in Beast Morphers, and the thing that kills him is human DNA. Like, I understand that Benjix did not have the greatest ending in RPM, but Beast Morphers ending is just as jarring, guys. Like, why does human DNA kill Benjix? No one has given me a concrete answer to that, cause it doesn't make sense. It does not. I'm not even gonna harp about that issue some more. And lastly, I feel like if you were going to make this an RPM sequel, you should have built it from the start. Not start in the second season of Beast Morphers, because they did not really have time to put this story together and answer everybody's questions, man. It just felt like they were rushing and rushing and rushing and rushing and rushing to get to the conclusion. While the conclusion, I will say, was not a bad idea, the execution of it was just so tacked on, and it wasn't good in my opinion. But hey, that's just my take. And also, man, the inclusion of Ben and Betty really just baffles me. The fact that y'all have the comic relief be the security of a facility that houses morphing grid energy. I understand that we've had comic relief do things like this before, but you would not put Bulk and Skull in charge of protecting something that houses morphing grid energy. They were only junior police. So I don't understand why y'all would give the comic relief this job. And also, I just was not a fan of the cartoonish comedy that they had in Beast Morphers. The one thing that I will say about Dino Fury is, even though you still have a hint of that cartoonish comedy, they have toned it down with J-Borg. So I can't really complain about that too much in Dino Fury. Beast Morphers is a good 6.5. This is definitely a season that I definitely am not going to put in the worst or the best. It just sits in the middle. And that's pretty much my opinions on Beast Morphers. Like I said, man, I don't really hate Beast Morphers, and neither do I love it. I have mixed feelings about this show. I do plan to rewatch it in the future. Maybe my opinions will change a bit about Beast Morphers, but for now, those are pretty much my thoughts on Beast Morphers. I hope you guys like this review. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe.